My guest today is someone whose career really embodies what this podcast is all about. Kriss Herbert is now the Network Content Director at Gaydio, the UK's LGBTQ plus station, overseeing the music, sound, talent, strategy, shape of everything that listeners hear. But his route there wasn't necessarily a straight line. He started out in retail, running huge teams at Next, before moving into Manchester's nightlife as a DJ, playing everything from small gigs to huge festivals, even warming up for people like Rita and Clean Bandit. That love of music and performance pulled him into radio, first as a presenter at Gaydio, then over at the BBC, before returning to Gaydio, where he worked his way up from production manager to content manager and now leading the whole network. Along the way, there have been the wild ideas, like rebranding the station for Lady Gaga for 12 hours solely. If you like Lady Gaga, it works, but if not. And the big responsibilities, from building music strategy to creating Gaydio's Academy, which trains the next generation of LGBTQ plus broadcasters. And at the heart of it has been one simple mission: giving people the chance to be their true selves on air and making sure the whole community feels represented. It's a story of grift, creativity, and grabbing opportunities as they come. Kriss, thank you for joining us on Accidentally Brilliant. You didn't start out in broadcasting. What drew you into DJing music? What got you there?
Well, I didn't start out in it, but I've always had a passion for. So when I think back, I used to pretend I was on the radio when I was a kid. Like, me and my brother used to like put snooker cues in a cube in the corner of the room and pretend we were in a soundproof booth. Bit similar to where we are today. And we used to pretend we were on the radio. Went to uni to do computing, did a year's worth of computing, and I woke up one morning and got, well, this is just a bit boring, isn't it? And then went to uni and did TV and radio. So I sort of did a bit of it in uni, lived a bit of that. But we all know that trying to get into the media industry isn't hard. It isn't easy. So therefore, sort of spent a bit of time, I'd say a bit of time, like nearly 15 years working in retail.
Do you remember a moment that happened, probably when you were working in retail, where you kind of went, actually, I could make a career out of this?
Yeah, so I was doing a lot of like voluntary radio. I was doing a bit here, there, and everywhere. And I got moved from one store to the other without wanting to blow my own trumpet. I was quite good at what I did. So basically, my area manager said, "What are you doing like with this radio thing? Like, you know, you're flirting around a bit of radio, you're flirting around a bit of DJing. Like, I can give you your own store." Like, you know, I had a share save scheme, you know, I got a pension that I'm paying into and all that. So, but in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm giving myself until I'm 30. And if I haven't made it in radio till I'm 30, there's no point chasing it much more. So that was almost my cutoff. And this was very much around my 30th birthday where like, here's a store, or do I just carry on doing a bit of free radio work?
So what do you do in that situation? Obviously you chose radio.
Well, interestingly, a job came along at the same time I got offered this store that I applied for at Gaydio. Like, it was a station assistant role, really, really like low entry, and I applied for that. And it was around the same time that this place was like, well, do you want to do this or not? And then I was really lucky that out of 120 applicants, I was the one that they sort of said, yeah, you know, you've got the job.
It's so interesting because I didn't know that until doing my own research, right? I didn't know that, but it's those little moments that just completely change everything.
If it wasn't for that job coming up at that time and might have come up 3 months later, I probably wouldn't be sat here today. I'd probably be stacking shelves.
What did your boss at the retail outlet say?
Well, at the time I was like, no, it's not working, is it, radio? So I'll definitely do that. And then it was all sort of get putting in motion. And I went back in and I was like, yeah, so I'm leaving. And they're like, well, where are you going? I was like, well, I'm going to take an absolutely ridiculous pay cut and go for a really low entry level job in radio. And I was like, but look, I gave myself till I was 30. I wasn't quite 30. So I was like, I've got to do it. I had that experience of retail background. So in my head, I was like, well, if it goes tits up, I can go back into retail because retail's going to be there. Although in hindsight, it's not quite as easy as it was. But yeah.
You went from that. You were kind of Manchester clubs, warming up for people like Rita Ora at festivals. What has been the most surreal moment in your career to date?
I think, other than some of the crazy gigs that you get to do, like doing a bowling alley to no one and stuff like that, I think the most surreal moment has probably been, I think, warming up the main stage at Manchester Pride before, I think it was Clean Bandit, and just waiting in the wings and opening the curtains and going, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people there. So like 5,000 people, and I was still quite early on in my DJ career. I'd only really done bars, like 200-300 people. Then suddenly you've got 5,000 people there.
What does that do to you, like confidence wise? How do you?
Oh, it's horrible.
How do you step out?
The worst is always waiting. Like when you're waiting, because you're there and you're going on and you're trying to plug a USB in and you're like wobbling around everywhere. But as soon as you play a track and as soon as you get through the first mix, you're like, well, I just do what I do. And then when you look, and I distinctly remember, I'm not looking up. So I spent like the first 10 minutes just staring at the decks. Like, I'm not looking up. And then I looked up and then you could just see everyone dancing. At that moment, you're like, well, I can do this.
I can do this. This is the thing that it's obviously a skill that you've honed over the years, starting in
I started DJing, interestingly, when I had decks at home when I was like 14. Again, so years before I was out in clubs and stuff. But yeah, did a bit when I was like student and things like that. But yeah,
I think when we take that leap into doing something that we're not necessarily fully confident that this is just everything that we know is entirely about this. We're an expert at doing this, and it's scary until you've done it. Someone
said to me quite earlier on when I had a meeting with someone in sort of like my career, is don't say no. Like if you want to make it in especially in the media industry and stuff like that, don't say no. Say yes, give it a go. If you're crap, you're crap, and you don't do it again. Or if you mess it up, you mess it up. But just don't say no.
Yeah, which is the opposite to that song.
But even now, like when I'm working with people and I get people umming and ahhing with me, I'm like, I still have that in the back of my mind. I was like, do you want it? Because if you want it, you'd just be saying yes at every opportunity.
Yeah. It's always better to say. We were talking in a separate episode about brainstorming and coming up with ideas, and how that can be a real challenge in terms of often the person has an idea already and it's just them saying no to things. One of the rules that we put in place was that you have to say yes or yes but, and you have to take it on and build. If you don't agree with it, you have to build on from it. But that focus on yes is really important. I couldn't agree more. What did DJing teach you about the audience? So you've kind of effectively taken things like customer service, the audience interaction, and you're putting that into radio and into an audio medium. What did that teach you?
Other than the fact we don't work with drunk people, I think with Ray. So interestingly, I think a lot of my, as a director now, a lot of my skills to today I put back to being a manager in retail. Like you're used to working. I had 120 staff underneath me, and you've got people from who are just doing one day an evening and really don't want to be there, to people who are trying to make a career of it. You need very different management styles to that, which is similar to managing talent. Managing talent isn't different. You can't just be like, you've done that wrong, you've got to massage egos and everything else. On the DJing side of it, like it's been really, really useful whilst looking after like the music and stuff. Like I'm really lucky that I look after music, but then I've got a real life like music testing every time I DJ. Play a song, it bombs. It's like, well, I'm not putting that on the radio. Play a song while people are asking for it. It's like, oh my God, this needs to go in high rotation on the radio. And we're lucky with the team around me that it's a lot of DJs, so we're almost able to do that. And I think that's also what makes sort of Gaydio quite unique, in the fact that so many people on the music team DJ week in, week out. We really know what people are listening to, so we're able to do that. When you look at some of the bigger radio stations, are they just influenced by labels, or is it what people actually want to hear?
Yeah. Thinking of that crossover to what you do, how did you first, assuming it was at Gaydio, how did you first go from kind of the back end into presenting on air stuff? When did that happen?
Well, often it was the other way around. So I had always done presenting. So when I was volunteering, I was volunteer presenter. I did some stuff at Radio Manchester as well. That was always presenting. but I'm a giant radio nerd, and then with having that management experience, and I suppose in a way, and I speak about this a lot with some of my friends, I feel like I'm a natural leader in a way. Like I want to always do things and progress things. So presenting came first. The management side of things was second.
It's interesting because thinking back, I was talking to Chris Blackmore, marketing at Gaydio, and is on-air talent.
Yeah.
Also one of those people that is great. And I was talking to him, he recently headlined during Pride.
Yeah.
Right. And what an amazing moment that is. And it struck me how in that office, actually, how many different people have differing skills, but also have an environment to do different things.
Yeah. I think it goes back down to that. Don't say no, and like a jack of all trade, master of none. Like,
they're screaming no, but you're like, get in.
Yeah, like literally, we'll often, and I've used that phrase quite a lot, especially somewhere like Gaydio where it is a small team. Where you do have to do a bit. And I remember when I brought when not long after I took on the job, and there was quite a lot of people that happened to be leaving at the same time just by pure fluke. One went to Radio 1 and I was like, right, and he's doing a show. Someone came and was like, but I like this role, but I also like the sound of this role, and I like to do loads of bits. And I was like, you will literally do a bit of everything at Gaydio. And when I think of that, last week before Manchester Pride, I was painting an MDF board for a sign to go up somewhere, and then today I'm scheduling music for the station.
But it's that's the reality.
Yeah,
that's the reality of media, and actually, and certainly in that. So you block up the creative industries. That's the reality. I think those jobs or those roles where you just come in and you just do one thing and I think that's completely gone.
Well, I think they only exist on the massive scale now, and I think when anything that's smaller than the BBC, the Globals, the Bowers, or those big multinational companies, you've got to do a bit of everything. Otherwise, it won't survive.
But I think it's really interesting because those places where you can almost test out things, what it's like to be a presenter, and even if you are rubbish, fine. But what it's like to do this, what it's like to do that, those are the moments where actually you start to click and kind of go off in a different direction.
Yeah, I remember when I've not gone off down that route, but the first time I had to read the news on Gaydio, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be crap at this. I've never read news before. And now I actually really enjoy reading the news, even though, I've had no formal training on it, but I sort of put my presenter hat on it and do it like that. But I quite enjoy it. But yeah, like that's one of the things I was like, I never thought I'd ever enjoy that, but I actually quite enjoy it. I don't know if it's just because it's different. I do a lot of video editing now and never really wanted to do any of that at the start. But, obviously radio isn't just radio anymore.
It's completely moved. I think there is so much like my career, I've talked about this before, my career stems from a moment in time where I was really focused towards pitching broadcast. And then the delivery and the focus from me at that point, I just realized I love it. And it's those moments where you realize that you're accidentally brilliant at something and it suddenly sends you off in a different direction.
And I think that probably did happen with me down a management side. I wanted to be a presenter. I wanted to do a network show. And then down the career when I was working like behind the scenes and producing things, I was like, actually, I quite enjoy doing this production stuff and doing... not the organizing guests, that's really boring, but like the making the stuff that you hear, like that is what I thrive and I live on. Or someone give me a bit of audio and it's like been recorded in an echo chamber and it sounds like crap, and I'm like, I can make this good, and I said, I was like, listen to this now. I mean, it's easy now, you just run it through AI, but like, a few years ago you didn't have that. Like that, I absolutely love that.
It's true. Do you know what? When I come in, so for reference, I present as well on Gaydio. When I come in, there is rarely a point where you're not saying to me, check this out, I've got this new tool, I've got this thing where I've done it, and you're like, it's like
it's a bit boring thing, it's a sweep, it's just a sound effect.
But it's genuine excitement about this thing.
Yeah.
And it is infectious, and I think that then ripples through the team. You've pretty much done all of the roles that there are to do at Gaydio.
Except selling,
apart
which I'm never going to do.
We'll leave that one to the proper people. What has been the most accidental step for you, do you think? What have you done that you didn't really expect to take on?
I think sound design is within station the station sound. Like I knew I liked radio and what radio sounded like, and I knew I could curate playlists and presenters and do all that. But when I relaunched like the jingles on the station, like I didn't realize like how picky I am and how intricate I am and what I want it to sound like, and it's little things like that but really enjoyed it at the same time. Yeah. Like that is probably, and then I've like taken my hand to doing a bit of the production and things like that. It's probably those that I was like, never thought I'd be so into jingles.
Someone's got to be. Someone's got to be there.
You know.
I do often, I often talk about how when I hear my jingle back, where that guy's like Josh Wheeler, I'm like, I want to meet that person.
Well, he doesn't sound like that in real life.
He can't do.
No, absolutely. He
Imagine if he was just rocking around like that voice.
Yeah, no, he doesn't sound like that in real life. There's a lot of effects to make him sound like that. He actually does voices on other stations, but you'd never recognise that he sounds the same because of the amount of effects that we put him on.
There's just one person with a microphone.
Yeah.
Love it. What makes, radio, media, everything is shifting. We see it from a PR perspective. What makes Gaydio different in the current world?
The audience, like, people will often put a playlist on or another radio station on as background music. We find people are so engaged and connected. If you're listening to Gaydio, you're listening to Gaydio for the reason that you want to feel part of something, and we see that, and from a PR and brand perspective, that's brilliant because it means you've got people who are engaged in the station, which means that they're engaged in the brands that you advertise or you work with and things like that. And it's like almost like we hold like an element of trust. So if we do run an advert for someone, I believe that our audience believes that, like, we know that they are friendly to the LGBTQ plus community. There have been instances over the years where we've had to reject people on air because of sort of like their stances and things like that. So I think it's that element of trust that is, and the people that listen, the audience that listen or watch and consume now, I suppose, because it isn't just listening, like that, I think makes us quite unique from any other radio station.
We spoke to Kate Hartley, who talked about working in the 90s as a gay woman in PR and the challenges and how things have gotten better over the years. Obviously, the significant challenges happening at the moment. What are you seeing, and what kind of role do you see you and Gaydio playing in this time moment?
It's really interesting. I was speaking about this on the radio a couple of weeks back. Like it feels like we've made 2 steps forward, and we're definitely 1 step and maybe a little bit more currently on the way back. I think it's just amplifying the voices. I am a cis white gay man, but I can stand with my trans siblings and amplify what I believe that their rights are. And that is what Gaydio is here to do, is to represent the full LGBTQ plus community and just amplify and make other people aware of the struggles that, others might be having, that we still might have. It's still illegal in a whole load of countries to be gay. So, we don't have true equality yet. And I think that is what we're working towards now. Interesting you say sort of like about the 90s. I was in a meeting yesterday, and one of our directors, who was one of the first voices on air at Gaydio, he said the first thing he said on Gaydio was, I just saw a really hot guy outside. And that was the first time he'd ever been authentically gay on the radio. All right, this was 18, 19 years ago. But that's how things have changed in 20 years. So in 20 years' time, does that mean we've got true equality? I mean, the radio station doesn't need to exist if that's the case. Yeah. But yeah, I also think, like, within our community, we have a unique way of communicating, like the things we are into, the music and stuff. And that's like, when you hang around with your mates, because you get on with them. And that's sort of how I see Gaydio. Like it's your mates. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Dave Cooper, who presents the breakfast show, always talks to me about my show as being a almost like the overarching is that you're sat on the sofa having a coffee with a mate after work.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is really powerful because you're
it's a PG version. I always say in a bar.
I have to stop myself from swearing. We can swear here, that's fine. But it's that your friend sharing stuff with you. And I think what's really interesting is amplifying the voices, amplifying the community, but also conveying joy at the same time.
Yeah, it's not all doom and gloom.
It doesn't all doom and gloom. But sometimes when I'm looking for stories, it can be a real challenge. Talk to me about Lady Gaga.
Yeah, so this was obviously she's coming back on tour now, but this was the last time she did her tour, the Chromasca Ball. She'd been away for ages, obviously. And we were discussing, she was coming back. She was doing 2 gigs in London, and that was it. None other across the UK. And I was like, oh, we should do something for this. We should do something a bit heavy. And I was like, well, we'll just schedule a few extra Lady Gaga songs. And then someone made a joke in the office. I was like, why don't we just play Gaga all day long? And I was like, well, why don't we? And then I took the idea to a couple of people who I sort of sound off and be like, thinking about, playing Gaga every other song because I was playing it safe. And then they were like, if you're going to do it, do it. So I was like, right, sod it. We'll rebrand the station to Gaydio Gaga for 12 hours. And that is literally what we did. Rebranded the station, Gaydio Gaga. We played nothing but Gaga. The whole station was called Gaydio Gaga. The presenters ID'd it as you're listening to Gaydio Gaga. So literally for 12 hours, the station was called Gaydio Gaga. And we just played nothing but Gaga. And yes, there is enough Gaga songs to do that for a day and not have a high repetition of stuff. Because that was one of my biggest worries.
I love these things. I love creativity that just starts small, and you could take that to the nth degree and come, installations and stunts and all that stuff. But actually, at its core, it hits the audience. It hits kind of what Gaydio stands for. It's just such
we're giving away tickets throughout the
thing.
day and everything. So we built from this just idea of let's play some more Gaga into a whole station, giveaways throughout the day. We generally tried everything we could to get Gaga in as well, but that didn't happen. So we booked a Gaga impersonator.
Next, even better, right?
Which because we live streamed it and people were like, "Is Gaga okay?" Because she doesn't look like she normally looks.
She looks quite ropey.
And then she slipped into Welsh because obviously Donna Marie, who was the Gaga impersonator we booked, is actually Welsh.
It's almost that accidental point of view. Somebody throwing it out there as a bit of a joke. But then with the ethos, with the, just say yes thing, you can see how something like that can turn really quickly. And obviously you need to make sure that you sense check and everything. But actually, we could all do with being a little bit more yes.
Yeah, because someone could have gone, let's play Gaga all day. It's like, nah, that's crap. I know, who wants to hear that? Actually, I was like, actually. And I think it's that collaboratory working and that saying yes, especially in this industry, people do have egos, people do have their ideas. But to succeed, you've got to be open to other ideas, and don't be afraid of almost afterwards going, yeah, well, my idea probably would have been better. And then likewise, if somebody else has gone with an idea and it was better than yours, holding fair play, that was better than mine. There's been plenty of times where I've had an idea but where I'm with somebody else's, and then even then I'm like, well, I still think mine probably would have been better. But the person that you're delivering that for doesn't know what their idea was. Yeah. The only people that know is the people who are in that room.
Yeah.
Then you save it for another occasion.
Completely. And again, we Daniel, who was one of our previous episodes, we were talking about his bottom drawer of ideas that haven't sold yet.
Yeah.
It's absolutely that. And, that idea of competing with yourself to reach different milestones. But when you think from a brand differentiation point of view, trying to meet your audience in lots of different ways, whether you're a retailer or someone that makes cups, whatever it is, you have to have a different point of view. And I think if you look at radio stations, what you do in those kind of moments, that small little idea immediately catches the eye. And I think it's so smart.
And it hopefully brings other people in. Everything you do is part of the reason is marketing and bringing people in. It might have Gaga fans be like, oh my God, I never heard of Gaydio. I'm going to put on to playing Gaydio all day today. Then it goes back to that, the old fashioned thing in radio is once you've retuned your radio, it rarely gets like tuned back. So you get out your car, you get back in, and you it's still on. You know, obviously it's a bit different today, but I think that like people only know a certain amount of Alexa skills. Like I could probably reel off mine. I'm only probably turning my lights on and off and playing a couple of radio stations. Like that's all I probably know on like my Alexa skills.
I thought you liked the production side of things. You don't know how to work Alexa.
Well, I know how to work Alexa, but I just don't know all the different skills. It's not until it gets intertwined in you.
Yes.
And so many people only have those few that they are so used to using. So it's getting people out of the habit of doing that, you know.
It's behaviour change. You're catching people and you know, you're bringing them on a different journey, introducing them to different talents.
I realise I've said Alexa a lot, so if anyone's listening to this near one, I've just really annoyed them all.
Were you about to say other brands are available? I thought you were.
No.
How do you balance the day-to-day strategy with the production, the presenting? How do you get that balance right?
I don't. I started work yesterday at 6:30. I finished at 10:30.
I was hoping for more inspiration, but the reality.
Say no to things. No, it's hard. It really is hard. I went through a bit of a sort of a scheme a while back, and one thing I was really, really bad at was putting time in my diary for planning, because I felt that was almost a waste of time. Like a block out of 2 hours or something a week where I sit there and come up with ideas, but I might not come up with any ideas. Well, I've just wasted those 2 hours. But actually, that's so important. And it's just daft. But if things are booked in, things will happen. So that is the way that I go. You know, I try to do a touch point with all of my team once a week or every 2 weeks. For some of them, I do once a month, big meeting with the full team. They're booked in like date wise in the calendar, because if they weren't, there's a million one other things happening. You know, with small business, we're painting wood, like, you know, so they wouldn't happen. So you have to put it there. And I see the whole team when I got that monthly meeting, they're all coming over. They're like, oh, I've got so much to do. And it's like, right, it's 45 minutes. It's the only time we get everyone around, and it happens because it's booked in. So for me, the balance has to be just booking it in a diary. And even if it's you book it in and you're not doing anything, it could be booked in for plan in 6 months' time. That time is crucial, because in 6 months' time, you wish you'd have done those 2 hours.
The thing I wanted to talk to you about was Gaydio Academy.
Yeah.
Right? It's helped people essentially to go on and work at places like Radio 1, Capital. Why is it important for you to have that kind of training mechanism for the industry?
So I think, you know, the Gaydio Academy is an umbrella term for our volunteer program. So we do some fixed courses, but also, you know, quite a bit of Gaydio is run by volunteers. And that is where we bring people in that might have just actually from anything, from no skills at all to might have just finished uni. A big part of when Gaydio launched it was about bringing new people in and finding new talent. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be sat here today. So that was a big part of what Gaydio is. And I'm immensely proud. You know, the station has changed over the years. It was, you know, probably 99% volunteer based, where like on day one, it's not as much anymore. But there was still some really cool key people that come through the door, and key roles that come through the door that move on. You know, our news team is all volunteers, and a lot of them are third year students. And it's not easy, because they come through the door fresh out of uni. We spend time with them getting trained up. A lot of them are pretty decent. 6 months later, they go and get a job. Yeah. You know, but that's where we are. You know, and I know people have applied for jobs with bigger brands, and those brands have said, "You're great. You just need some experience. Go to Gaydio for 6 months and then reapply."
Yeah. Yeah,
it's great that I'm doing all this training for everyone, but you know, and then there's the other courses, the fixed courses, and these are ones that people who are disadvantaged or unemployed, and you know, we get people in and really deliver. Sometimes it's just a simple course like an induction or an intro to radio, where you get a bit of a taste of it and a flavour of it. But we've had people coming back from that and just being like, "Oh, I've got a job," and it might not be a job in the media. It might just be, "I've got a job at Tesco's," but coming in and meeting people is giving me that courage that I can do things. Yeah. You know, and that is amazing that we do that. You know, likewise, we've had people that have come in and like, "Don't tell my parents that I'm here, because, you know, I don't want them to know that I'm LGBT." And they finished a week and like, it's been great to come to a place where I can be my true authentic self, which I can't be at home. You know, it's a shame that still exists at home, but it's great that safe spaces exist for those people.
I've sort of sat in on a few of them, and I think they are fantastic. I think that there's an awful lot that my industry could learn from that in terms of helping people to get a step up into it. You know, even a bit like the volunteer side of things. I think there's lots of things that we could be cherry picking. I think I walked out at one point, and I walked out with a young person who was telling me how uni was really difficult for her. She was finding things so hard. She was struggling with like deadlines and courses, all of this stuff that was going on, and was also then telling me how effectively this was helping her, and this was giving her a different viewpoint on where she was going to go.
Yeah.
And I was like, actually, this isn't just a training when you get sent on.
Yeah.
Go to London and sit there for an hour and be like, I just want to get out. This was actually life training in a way, and I think that is incredible. And to be able to do that in a small team where resources low, power to you. I think that's great.
It's hard. It is hard, you know, when you've got people that do need a lot of hand holding, and then 6 to 9 months later might go and get a job, so you have to bring something new in. It is hard. And, you know, I could sit here and be like, okay, for not a huge amount of money, you could bring in a full-time broadcast journalist and get away with that. But then actually, you know, it changes the ethos of things, of people coming in through the door of not doing anything. You know, you mentioned working up to Radio 1. Dean McCulloch, who now is on Radio 1, walked through our door, I think, with 1 hour's worth of radio experience. We've got other presenters on other stations. I've got a producer that come to Gaydio, was doing some production stuff behind the scenes, and is now on the Capital Breakfast Show. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are people now across the industry, and it's not just us. Like, I'm not going to say like, oh my god, the whole industry is because of me. Like, there are so many amazing stations out there that are similar to Gaydio that do these programs and bring people on, and not just radio stations. Like, there are other like media brands and stuff that will do that. You know, and people always say to me, oh, but you've got people working for free. And I always stop them then. I always say this, like, they're not working for free. They're volunteering. And volunteering should be a two-way street. We get something, but they should be getting something as well. As soon as that stops, you should stop. And I would say that to everyone, like, because, you know, I even did some stuff at the BBC while I wasn't getting paid. Like, it's nuts to think back now, but like, someone like the BBC has got no money. But like I was doing stuff there. But I remember the managing editor at the time said, as soon as it feels like you're like that, we're taking the piss out of you, stop. And I will say that to everyone. If it feels like it's a one-way street, you're giving everything and you're not getting anything back, then something isn't right there, because volunteering should always be about that. And for some people that are really experienced, like presenters, they just love coming in and being a bit more gay on the radio than what they can be when they're talking to Deirdre and stuff at home.
Yeah, and it matters. It matters. That's kind of like the development of people. What role do you think that Gaydio plays now in 2025?
I think entertaining and education, like, which sounds like a BBC answer, because I do feel like we entertain, but I do also feel like we have it on us to educate, and not just with LGBTQ plus rights. There's so many other things that go on. You know, we do a big thing around World AIDS Day with HIV testing week, and all these things that we really, really get behind. Obviously, a big thing at the minute is talking about trans rights, and I think the last thing that I did for Trans Awareness Week, well, I just had real life trans voices on air talking about what their daily struggles are, and hearing that, like someone saying, I don't like going out to try on clothes because I don't know what's going to happen when I go to a changing room. Like, this is all things that we don't have to deal with. So having that education to the wider audience, that I think is a key part. So, and education drops down to bringing new people in and training the new people. And then there's the entertainment side as well. We play great music and we have a bit of fun. It's not all just in your face learning, and it's done in a way that sometimes it might just be, I talk about what I got up to last night and things like that. So, it is a bit of entertainment and education, I think, is a key part of what Gaydio is here for now.
It's a tough one because it's finding that, it's trying to find the balance. And I think you're absolutely right. Nobody changes their actions or behavior when you scream and shout at them. Broadly, if you are just telling someone, wagging a finger, it doesn't work. And actually, I remember talking to someone, and we were talking about this conference that we had gone to, and it was looking at the issues of domestic violence and effectively domestic violence in the home, and how difficult it is to talk about those issues in effectively news media or in soap and entertainment programming. But when it comes to radio, it's a perfect place because actually it's often, in many cases, it's not in visual format. People can feel relaxed and are able to. It's a medium that allows people to really get into difficult subjects more so than anywhere else.
It's the unexpected in radio as well. You put a podcast on, you're going to sit and hear people talking for 45 minutes or so. You put on the radio, you expect to hear music, the occasional bit of conversation. When there's someone talking for a longer period of time, I think of those moments where you turn the radio, I was like, what's this? That's where radio can have that impact. And it's still such a personal medium. You listen to radio often on your own, and it's there, and you're talking to that one person. You're in the car, and you turn it up in the car. You're at home, and you might be working, or you'd be like, oh, what's that? And I think that it's just so much more personal, and the power of a story like that is just so powerful, which is why I think on soaps, they do quite well at tackling some of these, because you can develop a storyline to it. But interesting, you talk about news where a news segment is 60 seconds long. There's not a lot you can get across in that news segment. Social media, you just scroll past it if you're not interested in it. And, the good thing about radio is it's just not expected, and you can, other than turning it off, which people don't often do, you're sort of stuck with it. It comes on, there's a bit of music coming in a bit longer, so you sit with it, and then you have that sort of moment.
You talked about trust. I think there's also that trust with presenters. There's trust in that. I always think, when I think about local radio, I think about, okay, so that person is, they shop where I shop all day. They go to the same sort of bars, pubs that I go to. They go to the same shop, all that stuff. And there is would I sit there and say, I trust my local? No, I wouldn't say. But there is an implied, there is a connection between us, even though we all have never met.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is really interesting, because when you are then talking about difficult subjects, you're already a step in the door.
People do trust broadcast. Like it is a traditional thing that if you ask anyone, do you trust what you read on social media? I would be surprised if anyone said yes. If you said, do you trust what you see on TV? All right, you might get a slightly sort of 50-50 where we are in the world. But I reckon if you ask most people, do you trust what you hear on the radio? I would be surprised if more than 10% said no. And I don't know why that is, but I think it's just that, like you say, that personal connection. People still believe that the person who's on air picks all the music. I mean, that hasn't happened for bloody years. Do you know what I mean? Like, they think, I get messages sometimes when I go on holiday saying, because we do an hour of like old school, and they're like, thingy who's sitting in for you, his anthems aren't as good as yours. I was like, it's a bloody computer picks it. It's the same songs, just in a different order.
You're giving away all the secrets.
I mean, I spent ages picking them all.
I do often think about changing and factoring in Christmas music. So I'm a lover of Christmas music. I'd be throwing them in from like June, July. All
you
over
won't.
I won't. Looking kind of across all of the things that you've done, what has been the thread that you've brought to each thing? What's the thread of everything you've done?
I think the biggest thing is authenticity. Like, there are other LGBTQ plus mediums out there that aren't authentic. We are not for profit. So it's not about making a ton of money and going home with fat paychecks. Trust me. What we do for the LGBTQ plus community. Don't get me wrong, there are other stations out there that do that, but some of the bigger ones, they don't. There's one that you have what I say. There's one that pops up every year. It's owned by News UK, who own quite right wing other media, and you're like, how can you be authentic with this when you also have that? And that doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah. It's interesting. Caroline, another guest, talked about authenticity of kind of bringing herself into her work and her agency, which she started. And it's that thing about whether you try and tone yourself or change yourself to fit. And in a sense, I suppose that's what you're saying. You stay completely true to who you are, the audience as a community. How does that kind of sit? How does that fit, with when the broader industry doing things in that space? What does that feel like?
I mean, some competition's good because I think, when some of these other stations pops up, it made us think, oh, there's others now. We need to sort of up our game a little bit. But at the back of your mind, you're just like, well, you're just in it for the money. And obviously that's very different to us because, we're not for profit. So it's not about that. It's about serving that community. But it's frustrating. I think that's probably the word. It's frustrating. And especially when you see, like, for me, you'll see like they got a big sponsor on and you're like, well, you've just given them like a chunk of money and they're probably it probably costs 10 times more to run that than it does us. And that, what is probably a small fraction to them, would be ginormous for us, and what we could achieve for that. Little things like we're moving office, and some of our facilities aren't the best they can be for doing the outreach and the training and stuff like that. And like just a little bit of that would help. You're trying to shout louder and stuff. So that is probably the biggest challenge, the frustration of those bigger sort of like things that aren't necessarily authentic, that stealing our thunder almost. And I don't mean stealing our thunder in a way of stealing our audience. I mean stealing our thunder of trying to do good.
It's a real tricky one to get, and it must be challenging for you guys and for the team to have that happen each year, where you're building momentum. And even if your audience can move at any point, any brand audience can move at any point, you've got the complete freedom to do that. But it's a sense of actually you're building that community. And I completely get you in terms of authenticity and kind of staying true for lots of different values, not just, what kind of music you play and what kind of people you have on air. I get it. If you could go back to Kriss at that retail outlet, what piece of advice would you give him?
How early in the retail career? I probably would give myself the advice of do more. I was lucky that job came up at that time, and I see myself as very lucky that job came up at that time. I see other people that I went to uni with that are in a completely different career, and they're like, oh, you're really, it's great that you worked hard. And I was like, oh, I did. Don't get me wrong. But it was also I think everything in life is an element of luck. But I feel like if I'd have done more, and I see people that are coming, like people that volunteered at us when they were like 17, and that's probably the only bit of advice that I'd give myself is I wish I'd done just a little bit more. I mean, I'm great where I am now, but I might have been in a very different sort of position in the career.
What would you have done?
I mean, I always wanted to present like a massive network evening show. I mean, I'm on a network of stations now, but like that was always the thing. Like at the time when I was starting out in radio, networking and doing network shows were few and far between. Now obviously they're all networked. But yeah, that was always what I wanted to do. And obviously I ended up going sort of behind the scenes. I don't in the slightest bit. I'm glad I'm not presenting now, because I always just wanted to be in a room with no windows and talking to a microphone. But like being a presenter now is quite, as you can see, quite different. So So yeah, that was, and that's always the advice I give to anybody else is just get out there and do stuff.
Yeah. Try things.
Yeah, try things. I wish I got the don't say no advice earlier. And I was interestingly, if you speak to most radio presenters, they're shy. Like they are. It's a bit different now because there is TV and social and stuff. But a lot of radio presenters, true like old school radio presenters, want to be in a room with no windows and no one can see them. So I was always a bit shy, and I think that held me back a bit. And it wasn't until I think there was interestingly, it was working in Next where I was having to do big team talks to, 20, 30 people at a time, where I just got more confident in talking in front of people and doing things. When I think back, like I wouldn't used to walk into a bar first if I was meeting someone, but now I'm like, well, I'll just go and sit here on my own, and it doesn't bother me in the slightest. But I don't know if that comes with age at the same time.
I am a big believer. I worked at Tesco just as a weekend boy on the tills, and I'm a real big believer in retail. You said that some of the biggest skills that you learned were at Next.
Yeah.
For me, one of the biggest shifts that I had in mindset and understanding people was working at Tesco.
Yeah, how like in some countries you have to go to the military, like you constrict. I feel like everyone should do like 6 months in retail because you'll start talking nicer to people because you've been on the receiving end of people talking to you horribly, and secondly, like you're like everyone should do it.
You understand, some of the big challenges we face as a society. We all think we're really different. We're not.
No,
we're really not. Everyone's buying the same fruit and veg, and I think that role, that function of customer service, having to engage with people, whether they're lovely, difficult, horrible, it's so much more than just a standard skill, and I think it's vital, and I think it bleeds into whatever you go on to do.
Yeah, and I think. Like Rita really taught me how to talk to people, like and how to diffuse situations. Like I will use humor quite a lot now to diffuse a situation. And then towards the end of my career, it probably wasn't how they wanted people to manage, but I used to use it with customers who were like, I remember at one point there was this customer because she'd come in really early to do a massive return, like I needed £200 and there wasn't enough money in the till. I was like, I have to get it on safe. And she's like, oh, well, but clearly moaning because she had to rush. I was like, I'll be back in 2 minutes. No, you won't, blah, blah, blah. So I literally ran as fast as I can. I was like, I will be back in 2 minutes. Come back. And I got back and I went, 55, 56. I made it in under 2 minutes. And at that moment, she was just like, she just started laughing to herself.
What can you do?
Like, well, what could she do?
Yeah.
Like, I'm there breathing heavily, pouring with sweat. But
was it worth it? Finally, Kriss, what is it that makes you feel accidentally brilliant?
Do you ever get that feeling where you think to yourself, can I do this? And then you think, well, I am doing this. And I think it's in those moments. And I think we all have them, no matter what we're doing, especially in this industry. Like, it's in those moments where you think, I am doing this. And never always look back, because if you're in a business where it's fast paced and there's a lot of you and you're working towards something, take that time sometimes to look back and you think, I did that. And if it wasn't for me, that wouldn't have happened. Yeah. And that's what makes people accidentally brilliant.
Those little things where you push yourself, you're not sure, and then you do it. And
yeah.
You're like, actually, do you know what?
Sometimes it goes wrong.
Brilliant. Yeah, sometimes it goes wrong, but
no, you're absolutely crap. But
that's the next podcast.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Kriss, thank you so much.
Thank you.